All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are tackling a really complex and massive news story, the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. We're going to break down exactly what's going on, but we're going to look at it through a specific lens. Not only will we cover the essential facts, but we're also going to learn the powerful English vocabulary that journalists use when the stakes are this high. Think of it as part news deep dive, part language lesson.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll start with the shockwave this story sent through Washington and get into why this is all so controversial. Then, we'll look at the who's who, all the powerful names getting caught up in these files. After that, we'll zoom in on the language itself, the key words that really shape how we all understand this story. And finally, we'll analyze the political fallout and talk about why this thing is far from over.
Okay, so let's just start with the sheer impact of this release. I mean, this was not just another headline in the news cycle. No, this was more like a seismic event hitting the political world. And this quote from the BBC, it gets right to the heart of it. It says the case has convulsed the political system. Now that's a powerful word you don't hear every day, right? It means to shake something violently, to cause this huge, uncontrollable disturbance. It's basically like a political earthquake. Choosing that one word tells you this isn't just a big story, it's a system-shaking event.
So, why such a massive reaction? Well, it's because releasing these documents was anything but simple. In fact, the way they were released has become this huge controversy all on its own, and it's sparking a ton of debate and anger. Well, the biggest issue is that we just didn't get the whole story. First off, you can see all these big black boxes, right? Large parts of the documents are redacted. That's the official term for when they black out information, leaving these huge gaps in the narrative. Second, the Department of Justice actually missed its legal deadline for the release, which you could imagine immediately led to accusations of a cover-up. And finally, even the new stuff we did get, like photos, a lot of it doesn't have dates or locations, which makes it really hard to figure out what's actually going on.
Now, this story involves a whole network of incredibly powerful people. And it's really important to keep in mind, and the news reports are clear on this, that just because someone is mentioned or pictured with Epstein doesn't automatically mean they did anything wrong. But their connections are absolutely central to the story.
Okay, so let's run through the key players here. At the very center, of course, are Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. But the files drag in some of the most famous names on the planet. You've got former President Bill Clinton, who has always denied knowing about any of the crimes. Then there's Britain's Prince Andrew, who is stripped of his royal titles over allegations that he has, and listen to this official language, strenuously denied. That's a very specific legal phrase we're going to come back to. And finally, former President Donald Trump, who admitted he knew Epstein but says he threw him out of his club.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the who. And we've already heard some really powerful language being used. So now, let's pull those keywords out and really put them under the microscope. You know, mastering these words is like getting a backstage pass to understanding how political news is actually built.
We started with this one, convulsed. Remember, we're not just talking about big news here. It's a political earthquake. So when you see journalists use this word, what they're really telling you is that the entire system is shaking, that its very foundations have been rattled.
Now here's a word for what's happening as we speak: scrutinize. Journalists aren't just reading the files, they are scrutinizing them. It's this idea of a slow, careful, almost forensic examination. They're looking for every single hidden clue, every connection. It's the hard work of finding the real story inside mountains of data.
And remember this one from Prince Andrew's response? Strenuously denied. This is classic PR and legal speak. It's not just saying no. It's about building a forceful, public, absolute wall of denial. This is language being used as a shield.
And finally, a really important strategic word: pivot. In politics, when you're under a ton of pressure and you suddenly have to change your public direction, that's a pivot. We saw it when the White House was forced to go from kind of resisting the release to approving it. It's a classic political survival move.
So, now that we have the language, let's use it to analyze the political reaction. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Because what started as a moment of unity has very quickly turned into a brand new conflict.
So in a move that you almost never see in Washington these days, there was this initial bipartisan agreement, a full consensus. Both parties actually voted together to pass a law that forced the release to happen, essentially forcing the president's hand. For just a minute there, it looked like an issue that was bigger than politics.
But that unity, it completely shattered the second those incomplete files were released. And this is a perfect example of the modern political divide. On one side,
Republicans immediately focused on the process, warning the Attorney General of legal penalties for not following the law perfectly. On the other side, Democrats focused on the outcome, accusing the administration of a cover-up that denies justice to the victims. See that? Same event, two totally different angles of attack.
So, if you're thinking this story is just going to fade away, you should probably think again. What we've all seen so far, it's really just the tip of the iceberg.
And here's why. The Department of Justice has already confirmed that there are hundreds of thousands more pages of files still to come. The sheer amount of information is just staggering, and it's going to be released in batches over the next few weeks and months, which pretty much guarantees this story is staying in the headlines.
So, the big takeaway is this. We are only at the very beginning. The full story is still like a giant puzzle, with most of the pieces still in the box. The real work of sifting through all this evidence, of carefully looking at every detail and connecting all the dots, well, that has only just begun.
And that leaves us with the big question. Now that you know the language to look for, think about this. As journalists and the public continue to scrutinize every single one of these files, how will the full, final story change what we think we know about power, influence, and justice? That's the real narrative to watch.
喜欢这种学习方式，欢迎订阅我的频道，让我们一起用下一个10分钟，把商业英文变简单。